So today I'm going to be doing a carpet replacement and a pit overhaul. And the first thing that I'm doing right now is I've got all the tools that I'm going to use laid out. First is 3/4 wrenches that I'm going to use to remove the bolt holding the shock absorber to the cushion. Then I've got an impact and a ratchet with a 9/16 socket that I'm going to use to take the cushion off. I've got my special tools that I'm going to use to pull back the front roller and pin it down. I've got the long extension and a wrench that I'm going to use to remove the set screws on the pulley for the rear roller. I've got the 1-inch socket, 1/2-inch socket that I'm going to use to remove the nuts holding down the bounce plates. I've got the brackets that I'm going to use to remove the tension off of those front roller hinges so that I can actually get them off and make sure they're in good shape before I put them back on. Then I've got a 7/16 wrench and a 1/4-inch drive 7/16 long socket that I'm going to use to remove the bolts that are holding the old style vibration dampeners on there. And I've got a 9/16 wrench that's going to help me replace the brackets that support the bounce plates so that we can update them to the newer style and update all the hardware that's in the pit. And we're going to go ahead and get started here. Alright, so we're working on lane 3 today. I went ahead, locked it out, and tagged it out along with the adjacent machines. I've also gone ahead and removed the guard over the pinwheel and also the guard that covers up all the belts in the ball lift. And the first thing that I've got to do is remove the cushion here. And the first step to do that is to take out this 3/4-inch bolt that holds the shock absorber to it. And then after I do that, I'm going to unbolt this block. These are 9/16 bolts. And every time you pull out the cushion, you've got these blocks on both sides. But always you want to do the one that's on the ball lift side, because the nuts on these bolts are welded on to the frame of the machine. And if you break off one of the nuts over on the side opposite the ball lift, you can see there is absolutely no room for you to get in there and put an actual nut on it. So I'm going to unbolt it on this side, and I'll get back to you right after I finish that. Okay, so now I've got the cushion removed by taking the block off of the ball exit side. This is that cushion block, and inside that cushion block it's got this metal disc. And it's really important to keep up with this disc, because if you lose it or you put it back on without it, the side of that cushion weldment will actually eat through the rubber in this block, and it'll start to dig into the frame of the machine, and you don't want any of that. But the next step for this is we're going to take the tool that we used to pull the plastic rivets through the curtain, and we're just going to stick it through and use it as a lever between the tail plank and the front roller to bring this front roller back and expose that hole so that we can pin the front roller back. In this case, I used one of the specially designed pins to hold the front roller back, but you can also use a bolt that's got a 7/16 head on it. And since I've only got one of these pins, this is what I'm going to end up using over on the other side so I can get this front roller out. And now that I've got my front roller pinned back on both sides, I can go ahead and just pull it right out of the hinges. And after you get it out of the hinges on both sides, you can loosen the bolts on the rudder and bend that rudder blade back so that the front roller can actually slide into the other machine so that you can get it back above this carpet and pull it out the back. Okay, so I've got my front roller out of the carpet now, and I realized that I was filming it first with my phone in portrait orientation, and I'm sure that's going to drive some people crazy, but I've got it turned now, so it should be a little bit better. But now that I've got this front roller out, I can just go ahead and bring it right out of the back of the machine. And the next thing to do is going to be to come in and loosen these bolts that are holding the pulley on the back roller. This one's only got one bolt for some reason, but the way that you do that is you take your long extension and it fits right over the bolt. And then you can use that wrench that I had to get a hold of it, and you can loosen it up and that pulley should slide right off. Now, whoever did this one failed to notice that there was a flat side of this shaft where those set screws are supposed to go. So I ended up having to use about a quarter can of liquid wrench and a 5-foot crowbar to get it loose. You got to be real careful using a crowbar doing these, because if you're not, you'll actually end up bending that roller shaft or bending some other component in here, and you don't want any of that. Now once you got that pulley loose, you can come over to the opposite side, and underneath here you've got this hinge lever that releases the rear roller. And there's nothing to see, but you can actually pull that roller out of the hinge and move it up out of the way. And then you've got a hole here in the frame of the machine where you can slide the rear roller out under the next machine over. So now that I've got it out, I'm going to get it started through that hole so I can remove that pulley the rest of the way. And then I'm going to get that rear roller out and start working on the bounce plates. Alright, so I've got the rear roller pulled out from behind number 2. So the next thing that comes out is going to be the bounce plates and the carpet. Down here, you've got 2 bolts on each side that hold the bounce plates down to the frame of the machine. And those are just 1/2-inch nuts on posts that are connected to these brackets. So I'm going to go through and I'm going to loosen those. And then the reason I'm doing this is because this carpet is starting to get stretched out and it's starting to tear and it's looking real over the way. So instead of trying to wrestle with this thing with the carpet still wrapped around the bounce plates, I'm going to go ahead and loosen them up, and I'm going to cut the carpet in half and pull it out. Okay, so I figured it wouldn't be much help for me to explain how to get the bounce plates out. So I C-clipped my phone to a parts box, and I got it sitting on the ladder outside so that you can kind of watch the process. It's not going to be pretty, and I'm sure there's some people that have found a much better way to do it, but this is the only way that I've been able to get it done, so try not to laugh too hard. That actually ended up going a lot better than I expected it to. So now that I've got everything pulled out, this is a great time to go ahead and inspect the plows. This one looks pretty good, everything's tight. This one's good. We got a small crack that's been drilled out. I'll probably come back through with a piece of that old carpet and glue it on to cover that crack and prevent pin damage. But all these bolts look tight. The angle irons both look tight. So the next thing I'm going to do is clean out all this crap that's up underneath the carpet. I'm going to take these front roller hinges off. Oh shit. Yeah, I think it was about time for that one to come out anyway. Man, that's funny. Anyway, I'm going to do the front roller hinges next. And then I've got the new style of these pit support brackets. So I'm gonna go ahead and put those in, and I'll be right back with you. Okay, I think this next bit is a little easier to show you than it is to explain you to. So I'm gonna be using this bracket right here to take pressure off of this spring so that I can completely remove this front roller hinge. And the way I'm gonna do that is by taking this box and pressing the edges in between the coils of the spring. And then I'm going to take some zip ties for safety so that thing doesn't pop off of there and go flying across the center and hit me in the head. Just so I can make sure that it's got a good hold on it. And the way this bracket works is that the part of the spring that's inside of it stays stretched out, so that when you take the pressure off of this front roller hinge, the spring can't compress completely and it doesn't keep all that tension on it. So again, I'm using a special tool. And I'm just going to pull back this front roller hinge right quick and pull that pin out. And then when I release it, that spring's keeping enough tension off that I can just go ahead and remove that spring completely. And it's still under a lot of tension, so if it pops out of here, it's still go flying across the whole center. But this latch right here looks like nobody's ever greased it because it is stiff. So I'm going to grab some snap ring pliers so I can take it off. Then I'm going to clean up that shaft real good, put a little grease on it, and put that roller hinge back if it's in good enough shape on the inside. I'm also going to go ahead and do the same thing over on the other side of the machine. And after I finish that, I'll be right back and we'll move on to the next step. So I just removed this roller hinge on the other side, and it was just about the same way, pretty much no grease on it. And this one's actually started to wear down the shaft in the front. You can tell right here where this offset is that hinge turning on that shaft has just started to flatten out and wear down on this post. And there is a kit that you can get to replace these posts. You just have to reach through the other side of the machine and grind this one off. And the replacement is a bolt-on, but I don't have any, and I need this lane running tonight, so I'm just gonna have to leave this here. I'm gonna make a note of it so that I can come back later, but that's just something you need to watch out for. That's the main reason why you need to put grease on those front rollers, so that you don't end up with something like this, because it's just a pain in the ass to try to replace these things. And it doesn't take long to put a shot of grease on that thing every 3 months, every 6 months, something like that. It's just laziness and just bad workmanship. Alright, so the next thing I'm going to do is take out these support brackets. They've got 9/16 bolts on the other side of the machine. And you can actually just reach through this hole with a wrench and you can hold it and loosen those. But you've got the 2 on this side, and you've got the 2 over here on this side. So I'm going to go ahead and take those out. But before I do that, I want to talk about these new style support brackets. Now obviously these are different. You've got the side opposite the ball exit and the side towards the ball exit. And it's important to remember that these welded bolts have fine threads. So if you go down to the hardware store to get some new lock nuts and you just grab the first ones that'll fit it, you might end up stripping it out completely or breaking it off. And I say that because I'm guilty of that. The first one I did, I just grabbed some random 1/2 inch lock nuts and I ended up breaking off one of these posts, the very last one right at the end, and I had to go all the way back to the beginning and pull the bounce plates and the carpet back out and replace these brackets again, and that's just not something you want to end up doing. This job's already difficult enough. You don't need to be making it harder on yourself. So make sure you don't forget that these are fine threads. You need a fine thread nut. And I'm gonna go ahead and put these guys in and replace them with the old style, and we'll be back in a second. Okay, so now that I've got those new style support brackets put in, I'm gonna go ahead and put these front roller hinges back on. But before I do that, I'm gonna take a little shot of grease just on my fingers, straight out of the grease gun. I'm gonna go ahead and cover this pivot shaft. I'm also gonna go ahead and coat the inside of this thing. Just give it a thin layer of grease. And slide it back on there. Now we got our washer and our snap ring. Alright, so now I've got my front roller hinges back on. I've got them greased up. I've got my new style pit supports in on both sides. I've got both of these hinges greased up. Now I'm going to go to the bounce plates. What I'm going to do is I'm going to inspect them, make sure there's no cracks, make sure all the bolts are tight. And I'm also going to go through and I'm going to update to the newer style vibration dampener so that I don't end up with something like this again. So I'm going to go grab that bounce plate, add some new vibration dampeners, and I'll catch you in a minute.